My favorite quote by Albert Einstein: try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value. And that was where I failed the first 32 years of my life, as I was chasing success. Where I started to succeed in this world is when I flipped that on its head, listened to that quote, and just became a person of value.
Hey, John, thanks again for jumping on today. I got the pleasure of talking to you last week, which was huge for me to get a little bit of strategy time with you. But again, excited to bring you in today to just hear a little bit about kind of podcasting and the work you've been doing with entrepreneurs, so that some of the audience that listens to the Brands on Brands podcast can take some of that knowledge with them out there into the world. And for those people out there, what excites me today is that you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and you've been building this podcasting. Things that people ask about all the time right now. You've been doing since 2012. It's been now, and one of the most on fire podcasts out there, if you will, to steal one of your puns. I'd love to get it going and jump right in, since your time is short today, and I want to make sure I use all of it to our advantage. I'd love to start with your podcast community. I think you've built something like really special in this fire community you've built. Tell me about that community and how you're helping them today. What's the thing that you help them with the most?
So first off, thank you for having me on the show. Much appreciated. Love what you're building over there with Brands on Brands. And I have little to zero doubt this is going to be a really valuable episode for your listeners. So let's get into the business. So for me, the kind of more aerial version of your question is going to be like, how do I know what to create for my audience, for my listeners, for Fire Nation? And the answer is I do things that don't scale. I get on a call with them and I ask them, what is your biggest struggle? And I listen. And then I get on a call with another person. I do the same thing. And I collect all these valuable data points. And then I hear and I see and I categorize their biggest struggles. And I decide what should be the next solution that I create for them. And back in 2013, when I did that a bunch, the struggle that a lot of people were having is, John, I'm passionate about health or yoga or food or gardening or skating or whatever it might be, but I don't know how to start a podcast around that topic. Right. So I launched a podcasting community called Podcasters Paradise: How to Create, Grow, and Monetize Your Own Podcast. That was me providing a solution to a major struggle that my listeners were having. And so for anybody that's listening to this or watching this or whatever it might be, that's your answer, is go to your people. Create your free, valuable, and consistent content around your passion, your niche, your skills, your expertise, and then build an audience around that topic. And then ask that audience, what are you struggling with? Listen to them, and then decide what solution do you want to provide in the form of a product or a service or a community. That's the road to success.
What's interesting is you did what I'd say is opposite of a lot of businesses. Usually they build the business first, they figure out a service, and then they try to then, after they've done that for a little bit, try to then figure out, how do I communicate with them and market it? You started with the people. You started with a message and a platform, which was podcasting for you. It could be anything for whoever it is out there. But you started with podcasting. You had a voice. And then you built the products around the people, which is a different model. So I'd like to take that back a step. If you have to start like you did and find your voice first, like, how did you go about doing that? How did you know, A, that podcasting was the right platform for you, but B, what to talk about?
Because I went to things that I enjoyed, my passions, my interests, my desires. And I looked around and I said, wow, I'm listening to podcasts every single day as I drive to work, as I hit the gym, as I'm going, for a walk with my dog, as I'm folding laundry. I'm just consuming podcasts. I love this medium. I connect with it. I get it. I see why it's a powerful, powerful form of media. And oh, by the way, what I wish existed in this medium was a daily podcast that interviews entrepreneurs so that I could hear a new interview every single day, and it didn't exist. And so I said, that's a void, that's a niche that I can fill. not good at first, because of course I'm not going to be good at something I've never done before, but I'm going to put in the reps. I'm going to do it every single day. I'm going to get a little bit better. And that's how I came up with the idea of, let me provide value first. And this kind of circles back to, I put out a completely free 1-minute video every single day on all the platforms, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. Just a quote, just to inspire people. That's free, that's valuable, that's consistent. Same thing with my podcast. I'm putting out over 2,200 podcasts since 2012. That's free, that's valuable, that's consistent content. I'm just giving this value to the world, building an audience around that and saying, oh, by the way, thank you for, first and foremost, for being part of my audience, for being part of Fire Nation, for listening to this content, for finding it valuable. What's your biggest struggle? What are you struggling with? Because I don't want to assume what you're struggling with, because I'm probably going to assume incorrectly, but you tell me, and then I'll decide if I want to create a solution to that. And of course, a lot of problems that people have, I don't want to create solutions for. I'm not going to, but some things I do. And that's what's turned into the Podcasters Paradise community. That's what turned into the Freedom Journal, the Mastery Journal, the Podcast Journal. All the different things that we've done over the years have been as a result of that process.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking about is for the businesses out there that are thinking, I should do a podcast to help get my business out to people. I feel like there's a lot of people that think like that and then end up failing. What do you think some of the challenges are when you're starting a podcast, for example, for the first time, that you might be missing the mark because maybe you're focusing on the wrong target?
So the thing is that people oftentimes do focus on the wrong target, because they say, oh, look what John Lee Dumas is doing over here. Look what Pat Flynn's doing over here. Look what Amy Porterfield is doing here. Look what Lewis Howes is doing over here. Like, they look at these people who have achieved a certain level of success and they just say, like, I'm going to go in that immediate direction. But you have your own unique set of skills, your own unique set of value. You have your own passions, your own excitements. Like, trying to recreate our wheel that we've already created, it's going to be a tough road to hoe, because you're just a different, unique individual person. Should you learn from people that have come before you? Absolutely. Yeah, like, should you stand upon the shoulders of giants? Of course. Like, I've learned from so many people along the way who came before me, who are doing things right now. But at the end of the day, you've got to find your own special, unique niche. Nobody was doing a daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. So I was the best, #1 daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. From day one. I was also the worst. I was also the only daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. What can you be the best, the worst, the only at from day one? That's your thing.
Right. And what I love is that idea of sometimes your curiosity, drives something that you could be good at, that you can put the effort into. And for a lot of people out there, whether they've started a business or not, or they're just thinking about it for the first time, or even honestly, like people getting out of college for the first time, I think there's some value in finding your voice and like honing a perspective. And some of that is just by creating content that you think is interesting on your own. But then you bring in this interview component into yours. And what do you think, what's that, why is that so critical that you start bringing in other people into your content? It's not just you talking to the world.
Because the world is a collision of ideas. The world's a collision of opportunity. The world's a collision of people. I mean, it's a sad place, if you're just like living on a mountaintop in a little hut by yourself. And, there's some Buddhist monks that hypothetically might be happy doing just that. Who knows? But I mean, we're humans. Like, we're meant to interact. We're meant to engage. We're meant to exchange ideas, to make ourselves better, to get out of our comfort zone, to get different perspectives, to see things that are outside of our own little sandbox. So those are all the reasons. Like, I bring guests on all the time that I don't agree with a good part of what they say, 10%, 50%, 75%. Some of them, I don't agree with anything that they say, but it's interesting to talk about and to think about, and to maybe, have them impact my thinking in a way. And that's where the collision of ideas comes, to a real valuable conclusion. It's when you're able and willing to have an open, honest conversation. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I think the biggest negative in most podcast interviews, and I hear it all the time, and I personally don't like it, but I hear it all the time, and it's with some of your biggest podcasters that you'll listen to, is, like, somebody's going to have Gary Vaynerchuk on the show. And this happens all the time with Gary Vaynerchuk, is like, he'll be on the show as a guest, and he'll be saying his spiel and his shtick, and he kind of has like the same 3 or 4 things that he says, all of which I completely agree with. Like, I love what Gary Vaynerchuk preaches and what he talks about. And then you'll just hear this guest just like completely conforming to everything that Gary's saying. Like, he's just placating him. Like, the guest will say something and Gary's like, no, I don't agree with that at all, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I love that Gary did that and disagrees with them. But then here's the guest just like, me, let me rephrase what I was trying to say to make it, exactly what you were saying. And I'm like, no, it's okay to have a different perspective, a different opinion. Like, when I have Gary Vaynerchuk on and he says, I don't agree with you, I'm like, we're gonna have to agree to disagree, brother, because like, this is what I think, for better or for worse. That's what you think, for better or for worse. Like, may the best man win, and like, whatever it might be. And to me, that's just better. That's a better conversation. That's better communication. That's just a better thing of just like having somebody that, this host is just trying to placate, to whatever the guest is kind of like railroading. Like, and this is, by the way, your cue to be like, John, I disagree with everything you just said. That's your chance. This is your chance.
Well, you're putting me in a hard spot there, John. I've definitely disagreed with some guests, but you just haven't said those things yet. But maybe we can
well,
find
I hope in the future, and you might have done this in the past, I don't know, when that occurred, you say, I just don't agree with you.
Yeah, no, I definitely have. What I think is interesting in what you're saying is, if you're out there trying to find your voice, but also if you're out there and you're just talking to yourself, you're not elevating the conversation, because it's not two-way. It's you just talking to the world. And I did that. It was practice for me. I don't think it's okay. I think it's okay to start with just yourself if you're trying to figure out what your perspective is and how you talk. But you do have to bring someone into that conversation at some point. Otherwise, you're talking to yourself. And also,
I'm actually really glad you said that. And I'm going to cut in here because
Please.
This gives me an opportunity to disagree with you, because I do disagree with that comment.
Sure.
What I agree with that you said is that bringing somebody else in brings a whole different aspect of things and really can elevate the conversation. At the same time, I love the shows that are like Monday interviews, Thursday topics, where
Sure.
the guest is consistently being just a solo voice and just sharing their thoughts. Because sometimes I don't want to just hear an interview where it's just, somebody talking, about, their life and their this and their ups and their downs and their devastating moments. I'm just like, cry me a river. I get it. Everybody's had a tough life. Like, wow. Like, let's get past that. Let's get to the good stuff. And that's why sometimes I love topic-based episodes where it's just meat and it's just a host sharing their well-formed thoughts. So I think that those can be great shows and they can add a lot of value, but I like both. Like, I really do like the both. And that's why my show, for the most part, is an interview-based show, frankly, because I just enjoy having the conversations more than having to sit down and come up with, what would be a topic-based show. It's not my strength.
Yeah. Oh, you must have looked at the format of my show and seen that there's interviews on Mondays and then, just me pontificating on Wednesdays.
No, I didn't. And it's surprising there is, with you being so negative about just pontificating.
Exactly. Well, you never like to hear yourself speak, but what I found is the Friday, like the more like free flowing Friday, where I just talk about what's going on in my life, is actually where people start to tune in. I think bringing that into our businesses is something that we all can do a little bit more of. If you're especially a solo company, if you're a service-based company, you're the face of your company, giving people a little bit of yourself has proved valuable. Do you get to do that in what you're doing as well?
Not as much as I'd like to, which is why I really like the idea of what you're talking about. Because when you're the host of a podcast, you're interviewing somebody, your goal and your job is to shine the spotlight on them. Whereas, you're an authority figure, you're an influencer, like you should be able to shine the spotlight on yourself as well. And that can really bring you closer and build you up in the eyes of your listeners much faster and quicker as that authority figure, as that, influencer that you're looking to build that personal brand through.
Let me ask one question. Let me put the spotlight on you, as you say, because the valuable piece you gave me last time we spoke was this idea of someone's first marketing strategy. And I'd like to ask you the same question for the entrepreneurs out there that are just getting started and building their brand for the first time and figuring out how to structure the communication with their people. Like, what do you do first?
That's a big question. So for me, it's going back to the first thing you need to do is know the avatar, the perfect listener of your podcast, the perfect viewer of your show, the perfect reader of your blog, whatever that might be. The first thing you need to do is know your avatar, because after that, everything goes to what would my avatar want? And if you know who your avatar is and their pain points or obstacles or challenges or struggles, everything else revolves around that. And it makes it all so much easier. So that's my advice.
All right. Thank you for your time today, John. You are an idol to me and many out there. So appreciate your time, brother.
Be squared. It was awesome. Take care.
Thank you.